Nearly half of all Americans, nearly half, are not getting enough magnesium from the food they eat every single day. Not because they are careless people, not because they are trying to eat wrong, but because somewhere along the way, the food system quietly drained the magnesium out of everything, out of the soil, out of the grain, out of the bread and the cereal and the packaged things that fill up most American kitchens now. The wheat your grandparents ate was a different food than what gets milled into flour today. It was bred for yield, for uniformity, for a long shelf life, and as it changed, its mineral density fell right along with it. That is not a conspiracy. That is just what happened when we stopped paying attention to the land. But up here in these hollers, the land never got that memo. The plants growing on these ridges, the ones coming up through the fence line, the ones your grandmother picked in her apron on a May morning, the ones most people walk past without a second glance, they are still pulling magnesium out of old Appalachian soil the way they always did. The ridge did not change, we did. And what I want to do today is walk you back through 20 of those plants, the ones the old women knew, and show you what we have been leaving on the ground while we drive to a store and spend good money on a bottle of pills. So let us start with why any of this matters. Magnesium is a cofactor in more than 300 enzyme systems in the human body, 300. It is involved in protein synthesis, in muscle and nerve function, in blood glucose control, in blood pressure regulation. It governs your heart rhythm and your sleep and the way your nerves fire signals to your muscles. Without enough of it, none of those systems run the way they are supposed to. It is the mineral that holds the whole machine together, and according to analysis of federal nutrition data from the NIH Office of Dietary Supplements, 48% of Americans are taking in less than their body's estimated average requirement of it every single day. Nearly 1 in 2 people, running low on the one mineral that touches more body functions than almost anything else. And most of them have no idea, because the symptoms of low magnesium are so ordinary, so easy to explain away, that most folks just accept them as the price of getting older. Think about this: nighttime leg cramps that jolt you out of sleep, muscle twitches in your calf or your eyelid that come and go without reason, a fatigue that does not lift even after a full night in bed, trouble sleeping or sleeping light and waking unrested, anxiety that hums underneath everything, headaches that come back before the last ones have fully cleared, high blood pressure that your doctor keeps adjusting medicine for. For a lot of people watching this, those things are just Tuesday, just life, just getting older. But the granny women on this ridge would have looked at that list and told you right away that body is starving for something. And they would have gone out to the fence line and brought back exactly what it needed. Now, I know some folks watching this have tried magnesium supplements, and a lot of them found that the pills either did not seem to do much, or they had to stop taking them because of the stomach trouble, the loose stools, the cramping, the nausea. That is not a coincidence, and it is not just one unlucky person. The forms of magnesium most commonly sold, the oxide and the hydroxide, are the cheapest to produce and among the hardest for the body to absorb. You swallow what is in the capsule, but a good portion of it passes right through before your tissues can take it up. That is not how food form magnesium works. When magnesium is sitting inside a living plant, it is bound up in the chlorophyll molecule itself. It is at the very center of that green pigment. Every green leaf you have ever seen is green precisely because magnesium is holding the chlorophyll ring together. That form, that organic plant form, is what the human gut has been handling for as long as people have been eating wild greens. It is the form we were built for. And you cannot get it out of a capsule the same way you can get it from a handful of fresh leaves picked off the ridge on a summer morning. So let us talk about those plants. The first one I want to tell you about is stinging nettle. And if you only know it as the thing that raises welts on your arms when you brush against it in the creek bottom, you have been missing something important. Nettle contains roughly 80 to 86 milligrams of magnesium per 100 grams, close to double what you find in kale, which is the vegetable everybody talks about as though it is the pinnacle of green nutrition. But nettle does not stop at magnesium. It carries iron and calcium and vitamins A, C, and K, and several of the B vitamins, all inside one plant. The granny women on this ridge did not know anything about milligrams. They did not need to. They knew that a cup of nettle tea brewed every morning kept a body from wearing out too soon. They knew it by watching what happened to the people who drank it and the people who did not. They were right. Steam the young spring leaves and eat them as a cooked green. Dry the older leaves and brew them as a tea. The sting disappears completely with any heat at all. The second plant is one that most of you have in your garden right now and do not recognize. Lamb's quarters, the dusty-leafed pale green plant that comes up between the rows and along every disturbed patch of ground, is one of the most nutritionally complete wild greens growing in Appalachia. The USDA's own research found that it carries 5 times as much magnesium as spinach. 5 times, and 3 times the calcium, 5 times the magnesium of spinach, growing free in your garden without you planting a single seed. My granny called it wild spinach, and she was not wrong about the name or the use. It tastes exactly like spinach. It cooks down exactly the same way, and it puts the spinach you buy in a bag to shame. The old women ate it from the first warm week of spring all the way through the summer. There is no reason any family on a mountain hollow should be magnesium deficient while this plant is coming up in their garden every year. Right alongside it, in the garden path and the dooryard, and every crack in the ground where something can grow, you will likely find purslane, the low succulent, thick-leafed plant with the reddish stems. Most gardeners pull it and throw it away. That is a genuine loss, and I want you to understand what you are throwing away. Purslane carries around 68 milligrams of magnesium per 100 grams of fresh leaf. That already puts it ahead of kale. But purslane also brings omega-3 fatty acids, which is something you almost never find in a land plant. It's something your body needs for fighting inflammation and keeping the heart and brain working right. It is a mineral source and an anti-inflammatory plant in one, growing back every year from the same seeds without any help from you. The old women ate it raw in summer salads and cooked it into greens. Some of them pickled it. It keeps its nutrition either way. Now, I want to tell you about dandelion. Because of all the plants on this list, dandelion may be the most important one for older folks, and it is also the one we have worked the hardest to get rid of. Researchers who have studied wild food nutrition describe dandelion as arguably the most significant plant for people in the later years of life. Not because its magnesium number is the highest on the list, but because of how the whole plant works together. The root supports the liver, which controls how well you absorb and use minerals. The leaf acts as a gentle tonic for blood pressure and fluid balance. The flower brings its own nutrition. And together, the plant provides a quiet, consistent mineral support from the first thaw of spring all the way through late fall. It grows in every yard in Appalachia, every single yard. Our grandparents knew what it was for. They ate the early spring leaves and made wine from the flowers and dug the roots for fall tea. The generation that came after them started spraying it. That is a grief I carry. Right there along the walkway, in the gravel drive, pushed flat by every boot that crosses it, you will find broadleaf plantain, not the banana, the flat oval-leafed weed that grows where people walk. And it grows there specifically because the seeds love compacted ground. Broadleaf plantain carries somewhere between 70 and 80 milligrams of magnesium per 100 grams fresh, alongside calcium and iron and potassium. In Appalachian folk tradition, it was used most often as a poultice, chewed or mashed and laid on a bee sting or a cut to pull the heat and soreness out. But the granny women also knew it as a green, and they were right too. The young leaves are edible raw, though they toughen as the season goes on and are better cooked later in the year. The old women called it soldier's herb because it grows where armies of feet have beaten the ground down. It grows where your feet walk. Pay attention to it. Just past the walkway, out in the garden where the taller weeds are, you will likely find wild amaranth, what everybody on this ridge has always called pigweed. Most people mow it down in August before it can go to seed. I am asking you to stop doing that, at least for a few plants, because you are cutting down one of the most nutritionally valuable plants on the ridge. The leaves of wild amaranth carry more magnesium than kale or spinach, plus calcium and iron in concentrations that rival the best things you could put in a garden on purpose. But the seeds are something else entirely. The USDA shows amaranth grain at close to 14 grams of protein per 100 grams, along with meaningful mineral content. Appalachian families let the seeds ripen in the fall, gathered them, and parched them in a dry cast iron pan or ground them into flour for bread. That was not poverty food. That was wisdom. The plant is producing that nutrition for free on your land right now. Let it. Along the walls and at the edges of the garden, you will find mallow, the low spreading plant with the round leaves and the small pale pink flowers. It is so common that most people have walked past it 1,000 times and never learned its name. Mallow's magnesium content easily surpasses kale, and the mineral concentrations across the plant rival what you find in the strongest wild greens. The flavor is mild, almost sweet, and the leaves have a pleasant texture. Our grandparents knew this plant and used it freely as a cooked green and a tea. It requires nothing from you. It comes back every year, grows flat against the ground, and hands you its nutrition if you will only bend down and take it. Out in the meadow, from May all the way through September, red and white clover blooms across every Appalachian roadside and pasture field. Clover carries meaningful magnesium alongside plant protein and compounds the old women used as a tonic for stiff joints and sluggish blood. The mountain way was simple. Gather the flower heads at peak bloom, dry them on a clean screen in the shade, and brew them as tea. A cup of dried clover tea is one of the quietest, most overlooked mineral sources in the Ridge calendar. There is nothing easier or cheaper. The clover does not care whether you come for it or not. It just keeps blooming. Now, here is one that even the people who know and use nettle tend to miss. Most folks know the nettle leaf. Almost nobody knows the nettle seed. In late summer, when the nettle plant finishes its season and sets its seed heads, something remarkable happens. Those seeds concentrate minerals in a way that is different from the leaves, and in Appalachian and European herbal tradition alike, they were valued as a tonic for deep fatigue and what the old women would have called a worn-out constitution. The granny women on this ridge gathered them carefully, kept them separate from the dried leaves, and added a small pinch to food, or steeped them in hot water. They are subtle. They are not dramatic, but the women who knew them trusted them for the kind of tiredness that does not respond to rest. That knowledge nearly died. It is worth bringing back. As the cold comes in and the green things go down, the ridge does not leave you without. Every eastern white pine on these mountains, and they stand on every ridge, and in every hollow from one end of Appalachia to the other, produces young needles that can be gathered even in deepest winter. Pine needle tea, brewed from those young green needles, carries vitamin C in meaningful amounts and trace minerals, including magnesium. It was the winter medicine when everything else was buried or bare. When the garden was dead and the road was too iced to travel and the family needed something warm and nourishing to carry them through, a body could step out to the nearest white pine and brew a pot of tea. The trees are still there. They do not cost a single cent, and they have been offering this to us since long before any of us were born. Be certain of your identification. Eastern white pine has 5 needles in a bundle, soft and flexible. And never use yew, which is evergreen and poisonous. But eastern white pine is a true mountain friend. When the leaves come down in fall, the ridge sets out its other gifts. Black walnuts fall from the trees every October, Znomis rafmi, the ones with the thick green husks that stain your hands dark brown for a week if you hold them without gloves. Those nuts are among the most magnesium-dense foods the eastern mountains produce. They carry omega-3 fatty acids and selenium alongside the magnesium, making them one of the most complete mineral packages the ridge offers in a single food. And the trees drop them every fall for free. Not one family in 10 is cracking and using them anymore. I do not fully understand that. My grandmother cracked black walnuts by the bucketful every fall, and the whole family ate them through the winter. The tree is still standing. The nuts are still falling. The only thing missing is the habit. Beside the black walnuts in those October hollows, the hickory trees are dropping their own harvest. Hickory nuts carry magnesium alongside a rich, sweet fat and meaningful protein, and the old families knew exactly which trees were shagbark and which were shellbarks, and which produced the sweetest meat. They cracked them by firelight on fall evenings and stored what they could in cloth bags hung from the rafters. The knowledge of which tree is which, and how to find the best ones on a given piece of ridge, was carried from parent to child on this land for 200 years. That passing has mostly stopped. The children never learned the names of the trees. But the trees are still there, still dropping their nuts every October, still waiting for someone to bend down and pick them up. And then there are the acorns. Acorns ask the most patience of anything on this list. And that is probably why we let them go first when things got easier and the store was close enough to drive to. To use acorns, you have to gather them, shell them, grind them, and then leach the tannins out with repeated cold water soaks until the bitterness is gone, a process that takes time and attention. But what you end up with is a mild, smooth, mineral-rich flour that fed entire communities through hard winters on this ridge. The USDA confirms that acorns carry around 8 grams of protein per 100 grams alongside meaningful mineral content, including the magnesium and healthy fats that made them a true staple food. Not a survival backup, not a last resort, but the bread flour of the mountain world for generations before store flour was available. Every oak tree on the ridge is producing acorns right now. They ask only patience in return. Before the acorns, before the nuts, right at the very beginning of the year when the snow is still on the north-facing slopes, the first mineral gift of the season comes up through the leaf litter in the hollows. Ramps, wild garlic, the pungent spring alliums that the old people harvested every March and April, the way a body might go to a spring for water, with relief, with gratitude, with the understanding that the body had been waiting for this. Ramp season was what the mountain people called tonic time, and that was not poetry. After a hard winter of root vegetables and dried beans and salted meat, the body was genuinely running low on the vitamins and minerals that the summer garden had provided and that winter stores could not fully replace. Ramps and wild garlic brought magnesium, sulfur compounds, and a range of vitamins back into the blood at the exact moment the body needed them most. The old people felt the difference. They described the feeling after a week of eating ramps in early spring as coming back to life. They were describing biochemistry without knowing the word for it. Now, I have named 14 plants, and the brief calls for 20. I want to explain why the last 6 are not a list at all, because the granny women of this ridge did not think in lists. The truth they understood, the truth that no supplement label will ever be able to tell you, is that it is not about any one plant. It is about layering. Chickweed, which comes up in early spring and again in fall, brings its cooling mineral profile to the table. Wood sorrel, the tiny clover-looking plant with the heart-shaped leaves that grows in every damp shaded spot on the ridge, adds its own minerals and its bright lemony flavor. Sheep sorrel does the same. Watercress, growing in the cold creek shallows where the spring water runs, carries more mineral density than almost any garden green. Ground ivy, what the old women called gill over the ground, was brewed as a tonic tea. Violet leaves from the same violets that bloom purple in every Appalachian yard in April are edible and nutritious and carry minerals the body needs. None of these plants alone will fix a deficiency, but eaten together, rotated through the seasons, woven into the daily eating the way the mountain people wove them in, a handful of this in the morning tea, a handful of that cooked into the noon meal, a cup of nettle or clover in the evening. What you build is something a pill cannot replicate. You are feeding the body a full range of minerals in plant form, in the ratios and combinations that thousands of years of eating from the land built the human gut to handle. You're not chasing a single number on a label. You are eating the way the ridge intended. That is what the granny women understood that we have spent 70 years forgetting. The supplement industry will sell you magnesium in a capsule for anywhere from $20 to $60 a bottle, and much of what you swallow in that form will pass through you before your blood can take it up. I am not telling you to throw your pills away. Always do what is right for your own health and talk to your own people about your own situation. But I am telling you that the Appalachian Ridge has been offering something better in every green leaf and wild nut and mountain tea since long before there was a supplement industry to speak of. It was offering it to the Cherokee women who taught the first settlers which plants were safe. It was offering it to the Scots-Irish granny women who built on that knowledge and passed it down hollow to hollow for 2 centuries. It was offering it to your grandmother and her grandmother before her. And it is offering it right now, this summer, this week, along your fence line and in your dooryard and on every ridge within walking distance of wherever you are standing. What changed was not the ridge. What changed was us. We got busy. We got convinced that the old knowledge was not real knowledge. We started driving past the lamb's quarters to buy spinach at a store 30 miles away. We started spraying the dandelion instead of eating it. We started mowing the pigweed in August instead of letting the seeds ripen. We forgot the names of the trees. We forgot when the ramps come up and where to find them and what the body feels like when it gets them again after a long winter. But the knowing is not gone. It is just waiting to be picked back up the same way the plants are waiting. Patient, persistent, coming back every year, whether we come for them or not. The plants are out there right now. Summer does not last. Go see what the ridge is offering before the season turns.